Welcome back, guys. I am back here with my buddy Joe Roberts for part two about so many in-depth things that Joe accomplished on his 9,000 kilometer journey, pushing a shopping cart. Take it away, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Great to be back. It's funny when I was with you last time. I took you through the pain and the struggle and the triumph, right?
Yeah.
Talked about how inside each and every one of us is more than we can see, and that it really is true. And it's a testament to a number of different things that I've leaned into in my life. Now I have to tell the truth. I got to a place in business where, and I said this before, I was the Canadian version of the American dream. I had acquired all the things that they say in our Western culture lead to happiness and success.
Yeah.
I had money, I had the car, I had the bling, I had the house in the hill, all of it. And I wasn't anymore happy. And here's what happened to me is that when I was on the street in the 19 and in that Christmas crisis,
Yeah.
when I walked out of the bar in my sock feet, one thing I didn't tell you about was a promise I made on a street corner. You see, in that day of despair, I reached out and I called out to God and I asked for help. And it was one of these sort of street corner prayers where it was like, God, give me a second chance. I don't deserve it,
Yes.
but I really love a second chance. If you crack the door open just this much, I promise I'll run through and I'll never look back. You have my word, right? And then I also said, if you do give me that chance and I do get a reboot, I'll do something to help others. And so I had never told anybody about this, Travis. This was just something that happened on that day I sold my boots in Vancouver. It was a promise I had made, promise between me and God. We were the only ones who knew about it. Well, I had gone out in the world and I had made good on promise one, right? I had over a decade of sobriety. I've gone out and built a business. So making good on moving forward, box ticked. But there was part of me that wanted to do something and share my story, more than just the places that I was going to, more than just the recovery community. I felt like something was tugging at my heart. Now, in 2003, I left the business world, not because I wasn't successful, because it wasn't feeding my purpose. I felt empty and I felt like there was something bigger for me to do in the world. So I left. My daughter was born, and selling my piece of the company gave me a little bit of time to float. I had some money, I could kind of choose what I wanted to do. There was no urgency.
Okay.
So a couple of years floated by, and I started working with this guy named Dr. Sean Richardson. Now, Sean's a former Olympic athlete. He also wrote his PhD on elite injury and elite athletes. So he knows how to be like the best in the world. Really smart guy. So we started we were on the speaking circuit. We would go into different companies and associations throughout Canada, the US, and share our story. He knew and had some really good intellectual property on high performance cultures and how to be the best in the world. And I knew and talked about what gets us stuck. All right. So it was this really great combination. And one day we were on an airplane ride going into Calgary, Alberta. And I turned to Sean and I said, Sean, I have to tell you about something. A long time ago, I made a promise on a street corner to pay it forward, to help, to do something. And, I was in this position in life, Travis, where, I had been given way more than I felt I deserved. And so I really felt, I felt this tugging to give back. And so I started to share this with Sean, and I said, I want to do something. He says, well, what do you have in mind? I said, well, I want to raise awareness on what are the issues that create homelessness for young people? What are the circumstances that create, that perfect storm where a kid enters into a gang or gets involved in criminal activity or gets involved in drugs or struggles with mental health, kind of going upstream. Like, what are some of the things that happen sort of back here?
Yeah.
And what if we change some of those things so that, we'd have less kids falling through the cracks?
Would be magic.
And Sean said, that's a really, that'd be a really good thing for you to speak to, Joe. You've got an authentic story. Your story is a great example of how to sort of break those chains and move forward. He says, now you have to understand, Sean's a very sporty guy. So he says, well, he says, Joe, he says, if you want to raise awareness and you want to inspire people to think differently, he says, why don't you run across Canada? And I remember turning in the plane, I said, why don't you run across Canada? You know, I don't know if you, it's kind of where it's kind of a wide country, you know. And I have to tell you something about myself, Travis. I never was a sporty guy. I mean, I am now, but I was never a sporty guy growing up. I failed at grade 9 and grade 10 gym. I mean, how do you fail gym, right? I never liked team sports.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the concept was out of sort of my purview. I couldn't really see the possibility. But then he said something really clever. Sean says, well, maybe you don't run, Joe. He says, what if you walked? You could talk to schools, government, stakeholders. You could go in and out of correctional institutions. Like, you got a powerful story. And when people hear your story, they see the world differently. You inspire them.
Wow.
Think about what it would be like to walk across this entire country and talk to all those different stakeholders and engage tens of thousands of kids. And he had me at the kids. It was like, okay, I'm in. I like it. So, but there was some fundamental problems. I said, well, how would a walk be different? Like, there's lots of walks, lots of campaigns. He says, I got it. He says, Joe, why don't you push a shopping cart? It's the symbol of chronic homelessness. It's the thing that you're trying to avoid for every single kid in this country. Along the way, you could call it a push for change.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about that, Travis, that made the hair on my neck go up.
Mm.
You have that moment.
Yep.
And I said, I think we need to do this. And so the plane landed, and I spent the weekend sort of marinating on this idea of how can we do it. The first problem we had was the shopping cart. I don't know about you, but every time I go to Walmart or Home Depot, I always get the shopping cart with the wheel that doesn't work, right? There's no way I was going to push
all the way down the aisle.
Yeah, I pushed a real shopping cart, and there's no way I was going to push a shop. Something else listeners need to understand is that it's about 5,400 miles, the distance, 9,000 kilometers. And there's no way to walk across Canada without doing at least one winter. So we needed something lightweight, something that would, be okay in the snow and the wet and the muck. So we went to a local high school and we presented the problem. The kids came up with this brilliant solution. They said, well, don't use a shopping cart, use a baby carriage and turn it into a shopping cart. So that's what we did. We went to a local, there's a company in Canada called Chariot Carriers. They're owned by the Thule Group now, but they made these really high-end baby buggies. We called them up and said, hey, will you donate a couple of those baby buggies to us? We want to turn one into a shopping cart and walk across Canada for youth at risk. And they said, sure. And within 48 hours, we had $4,000 worth of equipment in our garage. So we took it to a local metal fabricator. They put the cage on, and literally in like 3 weeks, we had the shopping cart problem solved. So now all we had to do is, solve 9,999 other problems. And you know what? I don't have time to get into it, but I need to tell you that we faced over 35 show-stopping challenges, roadblocks. And the reason I want to spend a little bit of time on this idea is that had we listened to the emotional uncertainty and fear and challenge when we faced those roadblocks, the campaign would have never happened.
Really?
We needed to get support from law enforcement, which I wasn't too keen on. We needed to get support from government. We needed to raise $1 million.
Yeah.
Right? Because we didn't want the money that people were giving us in the bucket to pay for the staff and the RV and the meals at Denny's, we wanted all the money that went in the bucket to actually go and help the kids.
Yep.
Because I don't like it when charities do that. So we had all of these problems, like insurmountable problems, but slowly we began to work through each and every one of these challenges until finally I found myself in Cape Spear, Newfoundland. Now, for those of you not familiar with the geography, Cape Spear, Newfoundland is they call it the Rock. It's the island of that's part of Newfoundland, and Cape Spear is the most easterly point. Not just the most easterly point of Canada, it's the most easterly point of North America. And in front of me was 9,000 kilometers of highway. And I'm smiling in this picture, but I need to tell you, I was absolutely terrified because I was 49 years old, a non-athlete, about to walk across the second widest country on earth, pushing a shopping cart.
Yikes.
And I was afraid that my body wouldn't make it, and I was afraid that nobody would care.
Okay.
And this video that I'm going to share with you captures how wrong I was on both of those fears, and how well the country engaged. And I want to share that. It's a horribly inspiring little 5-minute clip, but it captures what we faced and what we accomplished over the next 17 months as I walk slowly across the country. So check it out.
This is for, every kid in this country who feels different, who gets stuck. And it's our responsibility to reach out and help those children transition safely into adulthood.
Sometimes
coming over the bridge, here we are, and there's Joe. Push for change.
Have courage to fight, the people around you care. So you're alright, just a love that we can share. Ain't no pain, how we've suffered along the way. Underneath our clothes, our souls remain unchanged. Take off your mask of fear and push for change. Throw off your coat down and embrace the rain. Everyone is unique, yet we're a part of the human race. But it'll be worthwhile. Through moments of darkness, they seem to last for miles, miles and miles. Don't lose sight of the brilliance that you are. There is more in you than you can see. You gotta trust your heart. Whoa, whoa. We take off your mask of fear and push for change. Throw off your coat down and embrace the rain. Each of us is unique, yet we're a part of the human race. We won't do this alone, so together we'll push for change.
Incredible video. How many days total was this?
17 months. So it was 516 days. It was 11,375,000 steps, and I didn't lose a pound. Not 1 pound, man.
Really?
You know what? You cannot outwalk a bad diet. for for what was remarkable though wasn't that I walked across the country. The distance for those of you tuning into this in the U.S. This is the distance from New York City to the Santa Monica Pier back to New York City, with one Canadian winter thrown in there for character.
Mm.
So that's the scope of how far it was. But that wasn't as important as connecting with the young people. We got to connect with and inspire over 100,000 kids. And you saw like some of those, elementary schools but like literally hundreds of schools we went to where we had the entire auditorium. And then oftentimes they would come out and walk, 5K with us out in the highway. What was remarkable is as the campaign began to gather steam, we started to get support from government. We started to get support from, you saw, law enforcement professionals, because they understood the value this brought to communities, especially around the prevention stuff and youth safety. So it was, it was a little weird, but it was like we found common ground.
Yeah.
And we worked on that common ground together. But I have to tell you, I walked for over 5 months through Atlantic Canada without a lot of engagement.
Really?
I put in like thousands and thousands of kilometers before we started to see really big events.
Hmm.
But when we got to the Ontario border, which is sort of in the center of Canada, we come over the bridge, and it was the first really large group.
Okay.
And I remember being really inspired because as I crested the bridge, you saw that in the video. There was when it was on that drone shot of me on the bridge. I looked down and there was about 1,000 people, and students had been bussed in for this. And when we got into Ontario, it was a game changer. We started to have events every single day. We got a lot of media traction, and it really started to the ground started to swell. But when I got to that bridge, I remember coming down. And when I got to the bottom of the bridge, there was a hero of mine waiting to welcome me into Ontario. It was the greatest hockey dad in the world, Walter Gretzky. And if for those of you who don't know, Walter Gretzky is Wayne Gretzky's dad. And he's a bit of a celebrity here in Canada. He passed away last year, but someone who, it was important for me because, I grew up watching Walter Gretzky and Wayne Gretzky on TV, and having him be there to support me as I came into Ontario was so touching. And I remember walking with him, and Walter put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Joe, the work you're doing is important. Don't quit."
Mm.
I've had a lot of time to think about this over the years, Travis. And, if everybody who struggled had that one person to say, "Don't quit," just that one person to say, "I believe in you.
Yep.
I believe in you, man. Keep going. Your success is just in that next set of actions." And Walter didn't realize how important those words were to me. And they became really important as I headed into Northern Ontario. Northern Ontario in the wintertime, like Minnesota times 5. It's just, we were up in the real northern parts of the province. And the reason we were up there is that we came into Ontario in September and left in April, which gave us the entire school year. But what that meant is we were in the worst part of the province in the dead of winter. It was minus 40 degrees Celsius. We had 70-kilometer-an-hour wind coming off of Lake Superior. It was miserable. It was weird, and it was strange. And then it got even weirder. Yeah. So this was a joke, but I posted this on the Facebook, and my mom phoned me and she says, "You kids and your dangerous selfies, when you see a bear, you run, you don't take a picture." And I said, "Mom, it's Photoshop." She said, "I don't care what kind of bear it is." We explained to her that it was a doctored image, and we got her to stand down. So it was a little bit of fun that we were having.
That's
The
funny.
social media component of the campaign was really great because we got to connect with people every day, even when we were in the middle of nowhere. Right?
Yeah,
We were able to drive that message.
That's so special.
Yeah, but the arc of the story is inspiring, but there were a lot of days where it wasn't fun. It was hard.
Mhm.
And I want to talk to hard because
Yeah,
when life gets hard, it's like you got to find that nuclear energy. You got to find that purpose. You got to find your why to keep going when things get hard.
yeah,
And when I was in Northern Ontario in the middle of the winter, when it was really cold and windy and miserable and snowy, I remembered why I was doing this. And it had nothing to do with me walking across Canada. It had to do with kids like Sydney and Cameron,
uh,
kids that come from impossible environments, kids that were 14 and 15 years old that I met in the street in various different cities all across this country and throughout the United States, and it was them that reminded me of why I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and going out in that weather and walking. But on one particular day, I was having a tough go of it. And I seriously was considering packing it in and going home.
mm,
But I kept my feet moving in the face of uncertainty, in the face of being uncomfortable. And as I rounded the corner that day, I found myself in the shadow of the Wawa Goose. Now, this is a bit of an icon on our highway up here. Everybody up here knows it. It's kind of like Canada's Statue of Liberty or something.
okay.
It's this weird Canadian thing. And it's this roadside attraction. Everybody stops at and takes a picture of it. And when you look at montages of Canadiana and iconic Canadian content, it always sort of makes it in as one of those pieces. It's like Niagara Falls or wheat fields or lighthouses,
Okay.
But I
Okay.
found myself in the shadow of this goose and something hit me, something hit me. I realized that whatever I was afraid of in Newfoundland, I had left somewhere on the highway of action.
Mm,
And I realized that if I can get through that, I had just walked halfway across Canada, halfway across Lake Superior in the middle of winter as a 50-year-old man pushing a shopping cart. And I knew in that moment that if I can do that, I can do anything.
yeah.
And I feel that way today. When we look back at the history of challenges that we've navigated to get this far, those things build our character. And they're lessons to us to say to us, if we can make it through that, we can make it through anything. When we look at what's happened the last couple of years with COVID, if we can make it through that, we can make it through anything. And in that moment, I knew in my heart that I was safe, I was protected, and I was going to make it. And I was right. Because I slowly walked through the rest of Northern Ontario, made it to the Manitoba border, walked across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, over the Rocky Mountains, and finally, 6 months later, right down through that old neighborhood where I finished the campaign. Now, that neighborhood, I remember when I was walking down through the downtown east side, I walked past that park bench that I'd sat and sold my boots on.
Mm-hmm.
I walked past that corner where I'd made that prayer and promise. And back in the day, I used to always be full of shame.
Mm.
And if you'd have met me, I had a hard time making eye contact. I'd always look down at my feet because I was ashamed of who I was. I wasn't ashamed that day. My chin was up because I realized that I had built my character back up again and that my word was good and that promise I had made, I made good on it. And I turned the corner, we went up to the library and we finished our last event. And I'd successfully walked across the second widest country on earth. We raised about $600,000. We got to engage kids. There's so many different things that came out of it. We got to engage. I mean, we're a grassroots campaign and we got to sit down with our federal government and actually have a voice in shaping housing policy for youth.
Wow.
It's something that we never imagined that we would have the opportunity to do, but we were invited by our government to do that. Now, I would be remiss if I did not thank somebody who worked as hard on this campaign as I did, and that's our campaign director, Marie. You see, I'm sort of an entrepreneur. I have these ideas that are sort of 10 miles up, but Marie was the operational person. She was the person who took our big ideas and turned them into reality. She worked tirelessly for 3 years building the campaign and then spent 17 months on the road with us executing. She was truly the heart behind the cart. You know, there's a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, build a team. And Marie, she was the central person within that team. I'm fond of her for a number of reasons. One, of course, is that we share our life together as
I was waiting for it.
we're husband and wife, and so in a lot of ways, we have a shared connection to purpose and passion. And the work that we do today, our ministry, if you will, is to spread a message of hope. You know, to get people to see the world differently, get people to understand that they already have everything they need to be successful. You know, we spend most of our life trying to become something we already are, ready and equipped for the task at hand. And so it is that collective vision and value that moves our work forward. But we're also connected by something else, Travis. We're connected by history. That's
Perhaps she was the
Marie's the same girl from grade 10.
young lady that believed in you.
Yeah. After 28 years, we found each other again. And 2 months before the campaign shoved off, we made it official and became husband and wife. You know, I believe in possibility. I believe in possibility for you, for me, and for each and every person listening to this. I'm not special, right? Life throws us into a storm. You know, we don't ask for it, but here's the thing. We don't get to predict or change the storm, right? And even though it doesn't get better, doesn't mean we can't get better.
Yeah.
I didn't wait for the bars to close to get sober. And I didn't get to choose the weather in the walk across Canada. And I got asked by reporters all the time, Joe, how did you do it? How did you do it? There are three things I want people to take away from this story. Whether you care about homelessness or not, that's not really the relevant piece that I want you to take away. It's this, is that the three things that I did that helped me successfully get across the country was one, focus on the process, not the result. Focus on the process. What step do I got to take today, tomorrow, the next day, right? Don't manage what it is that we're trying to move towards. Manage your character, manage your process, right? Because sometimes, you know, when you look at that walk across Canada, there was 11,375,000 steps. No one step was more important than the other. But it was the cumulative that created the big result. I suppose one could argue maybe the first step was important, right? So don't worry about, you know, what result you're going after. Focus on mastering, you know, that the next set of actions. Number two, connect to your purpose, the thing that fires you up.
Yeah.
It could be something that, you know, dissatisfies you in the world, an injustice that you want to move towards, something that something that you care about, something that you would do as a volunteer. That's why I do this work, right? Because I care. You know, I spent my whole life back in the old days being that kind of guy that skulked around, you know, running a gun and spinning for prizes. And I looked at you and I would think, what can I get from you? I don't feel that way today. I look at the world and say, it's not what I can get from you. It's what you can get for you. Right? I don't want something from you. I want something for you, right? Because that's my purpose. Find your purpose, something that fires you up, because in that you'll find all the energy you need to move your life forward. And number three is find your Gus and be a Gus. You know, Gus spent 10 minutes with me, and he shaped the last 35 years of my life. I believe that we're meant to be in community, Travis. And I believe that when we share our thoughts, our sorrows, our sadness with other human beings, it helps us grow, it helps them grow, right? I believe in mentorship. I believe in sponsorship. I believe that, you know, iron sharpens iron. And so how can we as leaders be that encouraging word for someone? And how can we, you know, find that person for us to connect with, to keep us accountable and to get the encouragement in our bucket filled when we need. When we do those things, we can do anything. I believe that change is as perennial as the grass is green. I believe that we live right now, when in the not too distant future, we're going to look back at this time and call it before. As each one of us wakes up to our unlimited, untapped potential and picks up the mantle that's our opus, our push for change, and walks forward with courageous action, we can change our lives and the lives of people around us. But not 1 second before we change ourselves. And the reason I believe that is the first time I had that idea, I was sitting on a piece of cardboard in front of the Thurlow liquor store, asking anybody walking by for change. I'll leave you with one last story that encapsulates what the push for change meant to me. When I was in Newfoundland, I was walking along a particularly miserable stretch of highway full of rain and wind. And when I got to Corner Brook, a small city, the reporter asked me, "Joe, what does the push for change mean to you?" And it just so happened a few days earlier, in a place called Terra Nova National Park, I was walking along the road that day and I found something, a penny. What's remarkable, Travis, is I found this penny in a place where a penny had absolutely no earthly business being. It was in the middle of nowhere. There was no houses, there was no settlements, there was nothing. The other thing that's remarkable is it was the same color as the dirt that I found it in. And I remember I looked down in the pouring rain, I saw this penny, I knocked it on the side of my cart, and I picked some of the dirt off, and I realized this penny didn't look like other pennies. And all of a sudden, this metaphor came searing home right into my heart. You see, I found this penny in the street. This penny, I'd spent a couple of nights out in the weather. This penny definitely traveled a harder road. This penny had seen things other pennies hadn't seen. What occurred to me as I held that penny in my hand is that even though this penny doesn't look as pretty and shiny as the day it was minted, or pretty and shiny as the other pennies, by the very nature of what it is, it can never, ever lose its value. And neither can a human being. I put that penny in my pocket, and I was determined to give that to somebody who I thought would share that sentiment. And when I got to Vancouver, I put that penny in the hand of President Steve Morrison from the United Association of Canada. And he traded me with a check for $1 million. Yeah, good trade.
Well done on the ROI.
Yeah, good ROI. We use that money today in our foundation to support youth empowerment groups on issues related to homelessness in communities and schools all across the country. I'll leave you with one last poem and thought that was inspired by my friend Gus. It's called "There's More to You." And it was inspired by that interaction I had with Gus on that park bench 35 years ago. He picked up a can and continued his walk, this man I saw today. With dirty hair and layered old clothes, he reeked of dreams decayed. With broken tooth and crackled smile, he mumbled for some change. I passed him by, this man I saw picking through garbage today. Wrong turn here and a bad choice there can lead the best of pain. Such is the fate of some, I guess, to live that life insane. Junkie bum, the wino scum, I have no time today. I'm off to live my life divine. I passed this man today. So off I walked beyond the block and waited for the light. Beside me was a hair salon with mirrors shining bright. I looked at the man in a three-piece suit staring back at me that night, for it was me looking nothing like that man I used to fight. For back those blocks left years behind before I found the key, I realized the man I saw was nothing more than me. Behind me is a broken man, and a man you see now free. Life is grand when you understand there's more to you. There's more to you. There's more to you than what you see. Travis, on July 26, 1991, I began a journey searching for the better part of me, and I found it. I found it thanks to the love of God, redemption, hope, and the support of other people. And everything that I just shared with you once only existed in the faintest of my imagination. And so my question to anyone listening to this is, how good is your imagination? Where do you want to be a year from now? 5 years from now, 10 years from now? whatever that looks like, whatever legacy you're working on or whatever big roadblock you're trying to navigate. I want to tell you that it's possible, not because I read it in a book or I saw it in a movie, but for the simple fact that I used to push a shopping cart around the downtown east side of Vancouver. A convicted felon, drug addict, someone who struggled with mental health. There is more inside each and every one of us than we can see. And true courage is stepping up off that park bench and walking into uncertainty to discover what that looks like for you. I want to thank you for the opportunity, Travis, to be on the program, to share the story. If folks want to learn a little bit more about me, they can go to skidrowceo.com, and if you're on LinkedIn, you can connect with me at Joe Roberts, the Skid Row CEO on LinkedIn. And I did write a book. In fact, you can see it over my shoulder. We're going to try and figure out a way to get that to you. We do have some electronic copies, so stay tuned. I'm not sure what it looks like, so I don't want to overpromise, but we're going to donate them and figure out, not physical copies, but figure out how to get electronic copies into your hands so you can share this story. So once again, Travis, just, God bless you. Thanks for having me on the program. This is my why. I wake up every single morning looking for people to try and motivate and share an inspiring and encouraging story. So this has been an absolute honor and pleasure to be on the program.
Brother, I love you. I love the story. And I'm my hope that every time I walk inside, I tell my wife, I just want to touch the one that prayed for me this week. Yeah. So we've done that. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
This is for, every kid in this country who feels different, who gets stuck. And it's our responsibility to reach out and help those children transition safely into adulthood.
Sometimes
Coming over the bridge, here we are, and there's Joe. Push for change.
Have courage to fight the people around you care. There's no wrong or right, just a love that we can share. Ain't no pain, how we've suffered along the way. Underneath our clothes, our souls remain unchanged.
They're awesome.
Take off your mask of fear and push for change. Throw off your coat down and embrace the rain. Everyone is unique, yet we're a part of the